So we have completed the Muga and the synthetic turf pitch. We have completed the bowling green. Currently, the grass within the bowling green is in its establishment period. We have completed the two mini football pitches, grass football pitches to the west of the synthetic turf pitch. Again, they are in their grass establishment period. They are fenced off and not available for use. We completed the southern football pitches and rugby pitches last year. They've been establishing over the past 12 months, and just recently we have opened those up for general sort of recreational use, but not at this stage because they haven't sufficiently established. They are not available for local club use, and certainly not during the sort of winter months or the forthcoming autumn and winter months. We have completed all the footpath links around the Western Park, including links out onto Station Road, onto Barratt Plot H2 and onto David Wilson Homes Plots H7. We've completed the tree planting, all the shrub and native woodland planting within the Western Park, and we have completed the amenity grass seeding around the Western Park. Footpaths on the south side, they're all street lights are up and working. Liz and Kay covered the sort of administration and governance of these sports facilities earlier, so I don't need to say any more regarding that, other than perhaps just to add that there are other, at this point in time, perhaps other COVID issues that perhaps will need addressing, perhaps not, depending on when these are made available for use. Moving on to the Pioneer Park. And again, I'm assuming nobody can see anything at all on the screen yet?
No.
Right, okay. So I'm sure you're aware that work started here in October 2019. It then proceeded to rain pretty much for the next 5 months, and we did record some of the wettest months on record. It started to dry up in mid-March, which by that time, I'm afraid we were substantially behind programme. And then at the end of March, obviously, COVID became a reality, and the government announced some lockdown measures. Works ceased for a short period of time on the park whilst we took stock of the situation, and we worked through some of the guidance that was provided by the government with our contractor. I think it's probably just worth making this point that with respect to COVID, the government hasn't legislated for stopping works on construction sites, but nonetheless, it has had a significant detrimental effect on the industry. But the Construction Leadership Council did publish some guidelines for operating on sites during the pandemic, and these are generally what most of our contractors and certainly the clients are working in accordance with. Ultimately, for the Pioneer Park, we kind of left it up to our contractor to make the final decision on what he wanted to do in respect of either returning to site or having to close down completely. What he decided to do was to return to site, but unfortunately this was with a significantly reduced workforce. He decided that he didn't want to have any more than 4 people working on the site. Generally, there have only been an average of 3 on site, but to be perfectly honest, I think he has been quite depleted of resources, along with quite a few of the other contractors, with people shielding and with people actually taking advantage of the furlough scheme. So this has put quite a bit of pressure on him, and not just across on this project, but certainly on other projects that he's doing for other clients. But to be wholly honest, I'm just kind of thankful that we have managed to continue on there on these works, but inevitably it has delayed us even further. We are currently concurrently constructing the busway footpath adjacent to the Pioneer Park. Those works started this week, and that runs from Eagle Way up to the junction or the Bovis H6 boundary, so that picks up the western side of the Northern Greenway. So currently, we anticipate that the park and the adjacent busway footpath will be completed by the end of July, and that will include all the seeding works, or prep works and seeding works as well. Fortunately, at this point in time, we don't anticipate opening the play equipment up for public use. Although the government has recently, I believe, removed the restrictions on the use of the open sort of play areas, they have kind of introduced some quite onerous guidelines. Some are statutory, some are non-statutory, but these are sort of range from one-way systems, limiting the amount of people that use the play areas, perhaps restricting it to one parent at a time. They're even talking about possibly looking into booking systems for use of the play equipment. A consideration of hand sanitizer stations, for instance, consideration of banning food consumption within play areas, consideration of more bin provisions and emptying. But I think perhaps the most onerous is that they are expecting all the play areas to be monitored and certainly to enforce any restrictions that are written into any kind of risk assessment that has to address the COVID-19. So it's unfortunate and it's disappointing, but the works, I'm reasonably confident, will be complete by the end of July. But at this point in time, until we've had time to look through all the implications of these statutory and non-statutory guidelines, I'm sorry, but we don't intend to open up the park, certainly the play equipment areas, at that time. Moving on to the Northern Greenway areas, I just wished I could show you some maps here, but unfortunately that's not going to happen. The area between or just north of Pathfinder School, that commenced in December 2019, and we've experienced the same issues in respect of the completion of Leap 1 and the Northern Greenway on that section. Same issues we've experienced as we have on Pioneer Park. The current plan is the resources that are working on the Pioneer Park will move over to the to Leap 1 and to the Greenway at the end of July, beginning of August, and look to complete and finish the Leap 1 and area of the Northern Greenway. We have so far finished the drain, well, substantially completed the drainage. We have completed the planting, tree planting and shrub planting and the lighting, and we've made a start on the earthworks and the footpaths, the earthwork mounding and the footpaths through there. But based on that same resource, which is really only kind of about 3 operatives that are working on the Pioneer Park that will switch over, we expect that to take about 8 weeks to complete. So we are expecting everything to be complete there at the end of August. Sorry, the end of September. That includes also all the prep work and the seeding works. The water park and the balance of the Northern Greenway. We were supposed to start these works in sort of April, May time. I think that's what I reported at the last forum I attended. We have spent the last few months trying to resolve quite a few issues that have been thrown up by the COVID pandemic with our preferred contractor. This is generally in respect of guarantees from our own supply chain, from their supply chain in respect to the procurement and delivery of the bridges, timber bridges that are going to be delivered in the water park and in the Northern Greenway, the street lighting and the play equipment. And obviously also looking at their own resources, the available resources that our preferred contractor had, and also the mitigation measures that they would need to implement in respect of the COVID risk, along with the sort of added financial implications in actually implementing those. I must admit there were a few points along the way where we questioned whether we could or should be starting these works, but I am pleased to say that following a lot of hard work behind the scenes, we did place a contract with Barhell Limited for the hard landscaping works and the Leap 2 works. They started on Monday. We will be placing a soft landscaping contract in due course, and those works will occur during the planting and seeding season, which I'll go on to. But very briefly, in the scope, Northern Greenway, there's a lot of hard landscaping, soft landscaping to include all the footpaths and the cycleways. There are 2 single span timber bridges. One will link between Taylor Wimpey Parcel H11 over the Ditch and Greenway to Bovis Parcel H5, and one will link from Linden Homes Parcel H12 over the Greenway to Bovis Homes Parcel H6. The whole of the Northern Greenway will be lit, street lighting along the length of the Greenway, and then we'll be installing street furniture, including plenty of and numerous locations, plenty of rubbish and dog waste bins. There is a requirement to realign and raise a section of the existing footpath through the Greenway between Linden and the Pathfinder School, and this is needed to meet the new levels of the bridge that we're installing across that section of Greenway. During this period, while we're installing the bridge and realigning the footpath, we will be diverting the public through the Pioneer Park footpath. It will come out through the Taylor Wimpey, start through the Taylor Wimpey development, and it will alight somewhere close to where the crossing to the school, Pathfinder School, is, which would all be so much easier if I could show you on a drawing. During this time, all the ditches will be cleared and the ditch banks seeded with wetland grass mix. The remainder of the embankments in the Northern Greenway will be seeded with a wildflower mix. The wildflower mix will be cut once a year, and this is normally in early autumn, and the wetland grass mix will be cut twice a year. Because these are wildflower mixes, they do take a little bit of time to establish, so probably a year to maybe 2 years. So they do look quite weedy in the first few years, but they will eventually look like a wildflower meadow. Throughout, we're going to plant about 250 trees, and there'll be kind of numerous areas of woodland and shrub mixed areas. Leap 2, which is located just north of the Linden Show Home, we're going to reduce the size. There's an existing pond there that's going to be reduced in size and mainly filled in and slightly relocated. We'll be carrying out some earthworks mounding within that Leap 2 area. We're going to install, there are 3 pieces of play equipment. There's a climbing trunk, there's a seaside playhouse, and a water feature pump and play area. And then the usual sort of benches, picnic tables and rubbish bins. The water park, scope within that, again, it's all hard and soft landscaping, which will include footpaths, cycleways. We'll be installing a 40-metre 3-span timber bridge across the narrowing between the 2 attenuation ponds. We'll be installing some sort of small timber viewing stroke dipping platforms along the eastern edge of the southern attenuation pond. There'll be, again, there'll be an asphalt footpath that runs directly north-south adjacent to the Taylor Wimpey and Linden homes and Bovis developments. This will be lit, but the 2-metre leisure sort of footpath towards the eastern boundary adjacent to the guided busway will not be lit. We're also installing benches, the usual benches and bins, quite a few ecological features such as bat boxes and bird boxes, Hibernaculars, Kingfisher Bank, and some tern rafts. The area will be predominantly seeded with meadow, wetland and tussock grassed areas, but there will be some amenity grassed areas. We're planting 150 trees throughout the water park, and again, large areas of native and woodland planting, and aquatics and marginals to the margins sides of the 2 attenuation ponds. So programme, as I said, the hard landscaping started on Monday, and this is expected to be complete by the end of October. Bare root planting, the trees, the native woodland and all the shrubs will take place in the 2020-2021 planting season. So that's November this year through to March next year. And then the completion of that in April and May will start and we'll seed the whole area. John, that concludes the presentation that you couldn't see from me.
Thanks, Steve. So, can you just go on mute for now? I can hear myself. So there are a series of questions that it was probably easier if I asked them all. You can address them so we're not having to kind of turn off on and off each other's mic. So on the, just because you were speaking about the water park, can we confirm if there's going to be footpath access around the lake? Also a question on Hog Roast Kitchen being told to move, why he had to move, where no one can see him because he was bringing a good feeling for the community. When will the path link to allotment into North Stowe be open? Can we have the gate open near the allotments into North Stowe? These are all on chat, Steve, by the way, just in case you need to remind yourself. Our Teams chat. Ditches and waterways from the Kingfisher Pond, what's the plans for maintenance as they're overgrown and full of foul water? When will the access to the bridleway be restricted so vehicles can no longer drive them? And also request, since your presentation wasn't available, could we have that online? And will there be planting around the attenuation ponds on B1050? So I will leave you to answer those questions. Steve, you're on mute.
Right. Okay, I think again all the plans that I actually intended to show you on the screen, they are all on the planning portals. But certainly, John, do you want me to send these to you to make them available to whoever needs to see them?
No, I mean, yeah, send them along and then we can put the post them
okay.
on online. Yeah, that's
right. Okay. Sarah, could you just remind me of these questions, and maybe do two and then, or three, and then I'll answer them.
Okay. So let's start with the footpaths around the lake.
Yes, there will be footpaths around the lake, definitely, yes.
Okay, and a question on, you talked about filling in that lake for LEAP 2.
Yeah, there's a small
the pond. Yeah, why is that? Because it's been good for wildlife.
Why it's part of the design and the planning permission. I think they wanted to perhaps reduce, because we're putting a LEAP there, perhaps in the early days, it was shown on our drawings. I think perhaps it's decided that it's not the ideal place to have a pond when there's a play area. So that's why it's not been removed completely. But these were comments that would have come out of Reserve Matters submissions. That it's decided that it needed to be reduced in size, and as I said, I would imagine it's because it's adjacent to a play area.
Okay, and moving the Hog Roast Kitchen.
Yeah, the Hog Roast Kitchen only went there temporarily because most of David's business was from the contractors on the housing sites. So when they all disappeared, he didn't ask me actually, but he just set up on the local square. So I went to see him. I felt that we should help him out during the kind of the COVID issues and the issues he was experiencing. It's his only form of income. So we let him stay there. But now people are moving back, including the contractors. We didn't really want to attract contractors' vehicles up onto the local square, perhaps mainly. And secondly, it was always understood that it was just a short-term position.
Thank you.
So David's happy with that, so I'm happy.
Okay. Links to the allotment. Link to the allotment and
the links are in from our footpath. There is an issue and link from the link into Barrett's parcel H2 because they've just there's actually just a weld mesh fence directly through where the link should be. Again, the link is positioned as it's supposed to be on the approved planning drawings. Barrett on H2 have only recently turned back up on site. I have spoken to them about that link. They are aware of it and they have committed to removing a section of the weld mesh fencing to allow access from, I think it's Peppercorn Drive, directly up to the allotments. But as I say, there is a link onto Station Road, and there eventually obviously will be links coming from the Greenway at some point in the future.
Okay. And ditches and waterways from Kingfisher Pond, plans for maintenance? What are
Yeah,
they?
as I mentioned in the presentation, we will be clearing out all the ditches. We'll be flailing them down and seeding them with wetland grass mix, and that will be part of this contract that started on Monday. But they'll certainly be cleared out before the winter, and then after that, the maintenance regime for the wetland it gets cut twice a year, and that's it.
Okay. When will access to the bridleways be restricted so vehicles can no longer drive down them?
Which bridleways, Sarah, are being questioned?
Dan, if you can just confirm. In the meantime, planting before the attenuation ponds on the B1050?
Yeah, that's in the scheme for this this planting season, 2020 to 2021. It's been out to tender. We have the tenders back. Everything, because of the COVID, I'm afraid, is sluggish and slow and responses from all different sort of stakeholders involved. But it is still our intention to start those works this planting season 2020-2021.
Okay, so just going back to the allotments. So you said the pathing was open, but they were saying that people are saying there's not. There's a gate still across it. So
no,
go back onto the
I didn't say it was open. I said there's a link installed from our footpath down to Barrett's boundary. But on that boundary, Barrett have installed a weld mesh fence, a fixed weld mesh fence. So you can't actually access at the moment. But as I said, they've only just recently turned back up on site, Barrett on parcel H2. I have spoken to them. They have said they will remove a section of fence to allow access from our link onto the footpath of the allotments.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have a timescale for that, sorry, but we will chase it through with them.
Okay. And just sticking with the allotments, obviously the car access was via the pavilion, which obviously has not yet been built. So what are the plans for vehicular access to the allotments?
Well, the current access, as you say, is through an old entrance to the old golf club. That will be closed off as soon as South Cams have finished. I think they may have finished the fencing now, but as soon as they're finished any works they were carrying out in the allotment. And the only access going forward will then be through the car park once that's constructed. There is no, as far as I'm aware, there is no car access directly up into the allotments.
No, there isn't.
Permanent scheme. So there will be no car access once we close the golf club, the old golf club entrance off, because we'll extend the footpath across there.
So in the gap between the car park being there and that golf club access being there, how would people access? They would access. They can access off Station Road. They can certainly access pedestrian access off the existing golf club entrance, but they won't be able to access with vehicles. Okay, all right. And I think that's answered the bridleways question as well from Dan. Okay, I think that is it. Yeah, just more comments on the state of Kingfisher Pond. We will pick up any other questions because obviously there's a slight delay with Facebook. It's 30 seconds behind where we're presenting here on Teams. So if there's another question for phase one, we will come back at the end. So we'll move on. Sarah, sorry. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I don't know if Stuart wants to an update on the of course, yes, employment and the local centre. Yep, Stuart.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Yeah, it's just a quick update on the employment land. Just to let you know that L&Q Estates will be selling the employment land area, so we won't. So it will be built by someone else. We're currently in negotiations with a current purchaser, an interested party, with the sale going through hopefully this autumn. And so subject to planning, construction could start as early as 2021. that employment area, I've had a few questions about the employment area and what it will consist of. Effectively, it will consist of B1 class, that's offices, general industrial, B2, and storage and distribution, that's B8, and potentially a household recycling centre as well. That's subject to county council approval on that one. The adjacent to the residential parcel, so adjacent to H4, H5 and H6, offices must be located adjacent to those areas for noise and mitigation purposes alone. And then along the interface with the employment, these and residential, these uses should back onto one another, so that the rear gardens of the properties and the rear parking for the employment. So there's no conflict in terms of the employment and the residential uses of those. In terms of the local centre, again, we've received quite a few questions about shops and the community centre itself. In terms of the shops, and again, we've got L&Q Estates are looking at selling that area, selling the site. And again, that'll be expected to be delivered at the same time as the employment area as well. We've had a lot of inquiries about some of the units, and we've got a list of those, and we're compiling a list of who's expressed interest on those, and we'll pass them on to potentially whoever the operator will be of the local centre. The local centre itself will consist of up to 1,500 square metres of ground floor retail, with a further 450 square metres of commercial, retail, leisure, food and drink, community, health, or other appropriate uses. The planning permission is quite open in that regard. In terms of the community centre building itself, I think Liz has covered most of that earlier in her presentation. We're still in negotiations in terms of getting that land, the land transferred to South Cambridge Council, and that has to be done by 750 occupations. So we're expecting, because of COVID, that's been slightly delayed. So I think we're roughly around about 560 odd occupations. So we may be another, but we're still hoping to get that transfer of land a lot earlier than the 750 occupations. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we don't have any questions on your part so far. There are further questions on the allotments that are coming up in the chat, which I will follow up with the team. Kathy, we had a question on drainage issues. Stephen, if you don't mind just updating, because obviously we had an email chain on the little bit of flooding that we saw. Can you just reiterate that for the forum?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, there was I was in a recent quite intense rain event, and I was sent some photos of some overtopping of the footpath on the ditch section between Linden Homes and Pathfinder School, and also I think Maria sent me some photos of some flooding out on the roundabout near Taylor Wimpey at the junction with Pathfinder and Wellington Road. So that sort of the catchment area that flows into that ditch has been operational for probably 4 to 5 years, and we have had an awful lot of rain, as I said, since October through to March. So it was quite understand why this flood occurred. We've put it generally down to there was possibly a blockage in the ditch, although our contractor who was working on the Pioneer Park, once I received the photos, he did go out and have a look, but we couldn't see anything. So we're going to keep an eye on it, we'll monitor it, but we don't think there's, as I sit here talking to you now, we don't think there's any issue at all with the hydraulic design. All the inlets and outlet pipes have been installed in accordance with the design drawings, as are the levels for the footway. So we will monitor it.
Okay, thank you.